Hey everyone, this is Jellyfish DAO, and we are doing movie nights.
It is time.
Bill and Ted have things that they want to do in their life, and they don't want death to stop them, and they overcome it.
I'm the filmmaker behind The Last Generation to Die. I'm Tim Maupin.
I'm Madalina Bellariu. I'm an actress and producer. You might know me from The Young Pope. I worked with Oscar winner director Paolo Sorrentino. And I'm a producer. I finished a short film called Bad Wings, and I'm behind the project Genetic, which is a thriller.
My name is Alessandro De Marco. I'm an actor and producer. I'm originally from Italy, but I'm based in London. And I am here, part of Jellyfish, and I'm here with Project Genetics, alongside Madalina.
Galia Barkol, and I'm creating and directing the feature documentary Ageless, which we just started shooting.
Laurence Ion, Madalina's brother, first of all, and steward of DO Flow at Vida DAO, where we fund longevity research projects, very early stage. On a mission to bring aging under medical control.
I'm Keith Comito, president of the nonprofit Lifespan.io, which raises funds and awareness for research aimed at extending healthy human lifespan. As part of that, we also run the Life Noggin YouTube channel, which some of you might know.
We all watched Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I think we're just going to talk about today about how it potentially relates to longevity. I think this was a more of an obvious one, but maybe there's some, more subtleties that we all picked up.
Like the first Bill and Ted's movie, I would say this one is very superficially kind of stupid and dumb, but under the surface actually has a lot of deeper ideas, dressed up in a pretty hilarious way. So if we want to tie it or talk about kind of the themes of life extension, how it ties into this movie, I mean, the obvious example is that the Grim Reaper is in the movie and is played amazingly by William Sadler.
Damn right.
And I know that this ties to some other famous films in the past, like the Seventh Seal with Max von Sydow. So I guess that would be my first question: is in thinking about existential hope and dread, what did seeing the Grim Reaper in this movie make you think about?
Longevity wise, I just thought it was so interesting how the relationship of the characters with death has become so amicable. And also, once you kind of figure out how to beat death, you realize it's pretty fragile, and it's okay, now it's kind of powerless and cute. But I also thought there was an interesting disconnect between death as this cute thing and aging as this thing you only see in hell when an old lady forces you to kiss her on the mouth. So, and I think this is really what's happening in our society, that aging scares people, but death is kind of something that is almost glamorous in a way. And we're not connecting the two.
Is everybody familiar with the scene from the Seventh Seal that this version of death is clearly taking his look from? I think it was Ingmar Bergman who was playing it. Is everyone familiar with that scene with Max von Sydow playing chess against the Grim Reaper? It's like that famous image where he's across the chess table. In my mind, just as a funny moment, it makes me wonder if almost that was the pitch in the writer's room for the movie. Someone was just hey, did you know that scene from that movie? Wouldn't it be funny if Bill and Ted, instead of playing chess, was playing Twister?
I also loved his acting.
And don't overlook his butt, by the way. Reaping burns a lot of calories.
But what I thought was kind of very, expected and traditional is there is this, it's not even a question of the separation between body and soul or mind, they're dead, but their spirit goes on. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe many people are not that concerned about death, because they assume that in some way it's not the end. And that this film really makes the point that this is how our culture sees it. One
of the kind of low key, but very relevant to the work that a lot of us are engaged in on healthy human lifespan is, it's not really called out as such, but it's clear that in a sense, the whole plot of the movie is Bill and Ted have things that they want to do in their life, and they don't want death to stop them, and they overcome it. So I think it's worth just kind of like flat out saying that it's never kind of questioned. It's never treated as a bad thing in the movie that they want to try to, you know, because you could have seen there could have been an angle there where people were like, oh, this is unnatural that you're trying, you know, this is your place, you had your time. But that conversation is actually not in the movie at all. And it's seen as a good thing. It's sort of subtle and not overt, but a nice message that I think could apply to people in the longevity field, because I know one thing that, you know, my family, for example, is always like on my case about is, you know, you're always working for tomorrow, but like you're not taking care of yourself now, right? Like you're not like living in the moment. And I think that's something that people in our field need to be able maybe to keep that duality in themselves, because if you're not nourishing yourself, you're not going to be an effective advocate in the future. So it's always kind of like it has to go hand in hand. And what made me think of that, Galia, was at the end of the movie when the time traveling Bill and Ted's come back and they're talking about all their travels through time, but they say something that's basically just sort of like a, you know, like a mantra on like mindfulness.
The best place to be is here. The best time to be is now.
Yeah, I was genuinely touched by this. Okay, I really liked the whole ending and how cute it was, and it all came together.
The movie, I guess you could say, has some notes of morphological freedom. You know, you have androids, you have Station, who can, you know, change his body type however he likes, and also just in general, in the first scene of the movie with the funny, you know, future fashion utopia with the what is this, the Rhea Pichelle with the stationphonic oxygenetic amplifier graphadella reverberator, or whatever that technology was. It's hard to imagine what the world was before those, right? Whatever that line was. I'm joking. But point is, it was a positive utopia in the future. And you don't really see that in any movies ever, specifically back then. So that's kind of another thing that's worth noting, is that the initial condition of the future was that, because I think it might have even been explicitly stated in maybe the end of the first movie, that when the wild stallions come together and their music like aligns the planets, it makes harmony everywhere. And I think it was in there that like cures diseases and makes people live longer and stuff. So that was part of the utopian vision of the future that's built in to Bill and Ted's.
Like the bottom line is that we just have no idea what the future brings, and it's hard for us to imagine different realities.
What would you say the goofiest, weirdest part that you're just like, I can't believe what I'm watching right now is during the movie?
When the souls, Melvin death, and at the end, death, Melvin, the antagonist, the villain. Yeah, it's fine. And then, you know, at the end of this video, we should really do this.
Even when the evil robots have told Bill and Ted that they're about to kill them, but then they do something cool, like Bill and Ted still can't help going like awesome for a second, but then they're like, oh, well, we're gonna kill you. We're like, oh.
And the four of them synchronize in this, and then, okay, that's serious. Oh my God.
Can't help themselves.
And then when the robots versions were trying to throw them, before they threw them over the cliff. And then they will love you guys. They tried their last trick.
We love you.
No, that doesn't work. But my heart stopped for a bit. Oh, maybe it's gonna work. Maybe the emotional manipulation there is gonna work for the robots. Nah, no, it's not.
Well, maybe I'll say, maybe it did work, but on a delayed blast. Because if you notice at the end of the movie, when the good robotusses beat the evil robotusses, the evil robotusses don't really try to fight back, and they actually say,
kudos to you, good humanusses.
This sort of trope of two kind of like lovable idiots kind of working together is also something that is very common in a lot of plays and literature, you know, like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, for example. These kind of two interchangeable, lovable idiots, right? As kind of like a mechanism. And even to some extent, like R2-D2 and C-3PO is kind of like a model of that as well in Star Wars.
And they have to be lovable, because otherwise we wouldn't watch until the end. You know, we are watching the movie for them, for the lead characters, for their journey, because we like something in them, even if they're silly, dumb.
Like there's a scene where I remember they're reading about philosophy, right? And they're talking about like Socrates.
The only true wisdom consists in knowing that you know nothing. That's us, dude. Oh yeah.
mean, why they do what they do is for love. They want to marry the babes and they're doing that for love. So you automatically feel for them. Oh yeah, I get that. They're not doing all of that from a selfish reason. I want to win this competition because I want to be rich or something. No.
It wasn't even just the Battle of the Bands that they wanted to do for the babes. It was, that's why they told the Grim Reaper they wanted to come back alive again.
You will come with me.
Phil, we can't. We gotta get back to the babes. Ted, we can't. We're dead, dude. We gotta stop those evil us's. We gotta try.
I was just recently interviewed for a book that I have over here called Bittersweet by Susan Cain. She's a best-selling author that wrote the book Quiet about introverts. But this was a lot of what she was asking me about was, you know, is this a selfish pursuit and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things that I had said, which is true, is I said that even if I knew 100% that I was going to die, like in 20 years, it would not change what I'm doing right now at all. And that's how I know it's authentic and it's not selfish, because even if it wasn't going to work for me, I'd still do the same thing. Right. So I think that's maybe an important point that everyone knows, that the people that are engaged in the field that we are in are not all like narcissists trying to just make themselves live 500 years. Some people are literally just trying to, you know, prevent their parents from getting Alzheimer's disease.
One thing here is the effective altruism community, right? I really subscribe to that kind of thinking, using the scientific method to maximize impact and be more effective, be rational about your altruism. I'm wondering what you guys think and how we could make an effective altruist analysis and make a case and bring more of that community towards allocating more of a percentage of their efforts and funds to the longevity space.
Yeah, I think I could take a first stab at that using something from this movie as a bridge point. One of the underlying themes of all the Bill and Ted's movies is, you know, music is wonderful and music is going to save the world, right? And that kind of ties to how there's some research right now relating to Alzheimer's disease, some work that I'm working on personally, that like sound, music, and light stimulus might be able to work against dementia, which was also kind of, in my opinion, kind of ties to a moment from Stranger Things that just happened with music. I won't say anymore. I don't want to spoil anyone, but that's very analogous to like Alzheimer's. Anyway, to answer Laurence's question, I think one of the key things for let's just take Alzheimer's work, right? If you care about moving, you know, colonizing other worlds or protecting Earth against an asteroid or whatever, something like 50% of all human beings, when you die, are going to have some level of Alzheimer's or dementia. And that means basically the last 5 or 10 years of half of the people on the planet, their intellectual capacities are diminished. So if we even just cured Alzheimer's, that's going to increase like the brain power of humanity by like 20%, which would help us solve every other problem. So I can't imagine anything that would be more existential, you know, effective altruism than just that one aspect of aging work, let alone the whole thing.
But I think this is the distinction that I guess the longevity field is trying to make. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there is so many funds are invested in Alzheimer's. I don't think anyone needs convincing that Alzheimer's is a big problem that we need to solve, but a school of thought of scientists came to the conclusion that a more effective way might be to kind of target the underlying biological mechanisms, right? So I don't even talk about life extension when I talk to someone, introducing them to like longevity in general, but kind of try to explain that age-related diseases are obviously terrible and not sustainable socially, financially, morally, and that maybe this other approach might extend life as a side effect, but more importantly, will help us treat those diseases and maybe all of those diseases collectively and better.
Just even if all you cared about was just like the economy, how much money is drained from society when, you know, a large percentage of the population is not even able to go out and get a job because they have to take care of ailing family members and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a winning point. And another kind of related point, this is the one that I usually use, Laurence, when people ask me that kind of question, and it usually works, is as a very naive example, let's just take one person, Nikola Tesla. You know, don't get me wrong, he didn't single-handedly do everything, but he had his hands in like half of all modern inventions, you know, like microwave, television, wireless electricity, etc. Right. And it's well known that he had a very bad decline in the last decade of his life. And it's also commonly believed that he was probably very close to a wireless electricity solution for the Earth that now we're kind of catching up to. So my question then is, what would it have done for the rate of technological progress, which is presumably would be needed to help us, not get hit by an asteroid, if that one person had 10 more healthy years of contribution? That, like, literally the whole world would look different. And that's one person. Apply that to every person in the world.
I think one of the biggest impacts you can have is to make a movie that kind of convinces them and gets them out of that pro-aging trance, so that they actually look at the data and realize that, yes, this is desirable and feasible.
No, you're right. You got to hit people emotionally. So, Laurence, I think that pivots a good question to the filmmakers on the call here. Did this movie that we watched give you any kind of lessons of something that you might want to apply to your own media projects and how to engage the public on exactly the point that Laurence is making right there?
We all, I think, believe aging is suffering. It's pretty obvious. Like, if you look at it objectively, it's suffering. Like, when you get to a certain point, the points Keith just made. And for me, like, the idea of effective altruism is, it's like you making that better for everyone. It's like just reducing that suffering. So I think in my mind, you do have to show a little bit of the suffering to, especially like in a film or something, you have to show like how that affects people. Because a lot of people, like, say, not entirely younger, some younger people certainly know it well, but anybody who's been afflicted with a family member or whatever, but some people maybe haven't had that direct contact with Alzheimer's, and you can effectively show that in a movie. And so I think, illustrating more clearly some of these, some of the things that we see in aging through a movie, and then also showing the potential removal of that, I think is a huge, very powerful way to do it. So I think that's what hopefully my movie is trying to do, and actually I think everybody here as well. So but that's kind of from my perspective.
I'm never sure how to, if aging should be talked about in the context of death again, or if it should be a separate thing. And then if you say, like, you want to overcome aging, then the first question people ask is, okay, so what, will we live forever? Like, what will we die of? So what are you saying? And then it becomes all about immortality. But what do you think, like, what do you find do you find that talking about kind of beating aging drives people away, or kind of creates misunderstandings?
I found that there's actually very little pushback. If you hit someone cold, say, hey, do you want to be 200 years old out of nowhere? Then people's initial knee-jerk reaction might be no. But if it's coming from, like, remediating disease and all that stuff, like, very few people have anything to argue with that. So my personal opinion is that a lot of these walls that people have up against life extension are actually really, really very soft. And, like, the second, like, your neighbor is taking some sort of pill and, like, looking like 20 years younger, everyone's going to be like, I want that immediately. As a viewer in this narrative, you never questioned yourself at all. Is it a bad thing for Bill and Ted to try to overcome death? You're on the ride with them just implicitly by the way they structured the narrative. Why did you go along so easily on that? Is it because Bill and Ted were young guys when they died and they didn't have enough time, and so you feel like they're owed for that extra life? Would you have felt the same if they were 80 years old when they got thrown off the cliff? And another thing that's very, very subtle but unique and worth noting is this movie combines technology and religion for the purposes of overcoming death, which is, people always think those things are against each other. People think that religions are against transhumanism or whatever, and they have to fight, and I don't think that's true. And this movie also subtly makes that point. Bill and Ted want to overcome death. They go to God and literally ask him to help, and he points them to a scientist.
I just had a flashback when you said they go to God. Even before then, they are asked, what's the meaning of life? That's the question in order for them to reach God.
It's like an 80s band, a Poison song.
Yeah. Every rose has a thorn.
Yeah.
Both of the Bill and Ted's movies, well, actually now there's 3 of them, while they're presenting themselves as lowbrow, but being, like, surreptitiously highbrow. So that they get you to, and they leave you with thoughts like this.
A few thoughts on Galia's question. Most people that have any concerns on on the longevity field, which I think is a big percentage of the people I meet, seem to me that they're afraid to hope. It's a sort of coping mechanism with the idea of dying. And I haven't found a specific message that works with everyone. There's this sort of careful balance between, if you talk only about health, people will not work or not see the kind of radical difference in the approach to drug development and medicine, different than the traditional pharma approach of just palliative care and managing symptoms, or coming to try to cure something when it's too late, or things like that. And so we need radical approaches to target aging and bring aging under medical control. But then on the other side, if you go to, radical life extensionists, like we're going to live forever, that also turns off a lot of people. And by the way, curing aging doesn't have anything to do with being immortal, because even today, with the healthiest group of teens, they have the lowest incidence of death, but it's still 0.01%. And so if it compounds, this is per year, 0.01%. So if you compound it, if you had no aging, people still wouldn't make it to, 450, I think, was my calculation. If you compound this risk every year, even if you eliminate the genetic diseases and things like that, and infectious diseases, you might still not make it past 600 or 700. Mm-hmm. So we still need to cure all the accidents. How do you cure all the accidents, like a being exploded or something, right? Like that's just, you're getting into transhumanism in a different conversation.
Dozens of scientists I talk to, I can say that a large percentage of them, maybe most of them, make it really, really clear that they're not working on death. They have no problem with death. Death is excellent.
You might be a king or a little street sweeper, but sooner or later you dance with the Reaper.
We're all about health and ending age-related diseases so that we can have our decline, sharply at the end of our lives, suffer less at the end of our lives, have our health span be matching more of our lifespan. But they refuse to talk about life extension as a goal because they know how misleading it is and how angry it can make people feel, because they misunderstand the real values behind it. So that's where I kind of find myself in dilemma.
Yeah, I think this is an area where, creative people like those of you on the call really have a role to play, not just in putting out media to shift perception, but also doing initiatives that in a sense serve as a barometer to understand where the Overton window actually is. Because my own perception here is that where some of those researchers think the Overton window is actually not where it is. I actually think the Overton window is much more accepting now than people think it is. As an example, like there are a lot of organizations right now that are, there's one, I don't want to name any names, but there's one super large one that's totally working on aging, but they're really, really trying to make it seem like they're not, right? In the press. But, on the flip side, you have, YouTube celebrities that are making videos that are just like bold face, like, hey, can we overcome aging? And it's like millions of views and like 99.99999% of everyone saying, yeah, if health is included, sign me up. So I think we don't have to be that shy. You don't want to sound crazy, of course, but if you come at it through the lens of health span and lifespan happen together, we're going to be curing these diseases, and that's what's going to have this effect. I think like almost all rational people are on board for that right now.
Movies at the moment, they're projecting more of loneliness. I think we as a human being, we kind of we want to be social. We are a social type of individuals. And from my understanding, most of the films at the moment, for example, The Age of Adeline and Elysium. So most of those films at the moment, they're projecting longevity, they're projecting the lifespan and living longer, almost like you're becoming lonely because all the people that you're caring about, they're going to die. You are one off occasion that you're going to be living longer. I think that from an entertainment standpoint, we should probably start to change in the message to say, well, yes, you're living longer, but everyone alongside with you are living longer as well. Because at the moment, we have so many movies that where people who live longer, they will see people they care about die. and they will become lonely. So it's becoming like rooted in our subconscious, I think. So I think that from an entertainment point, that's something that we could do.
I will say that I think you're 100% right throughout history, but I will say actually right now, like in the last couple of years, I'm actually seeing the first signs of that changing in pop culture. As an example, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Not just the movie The Eternals that we watched last time, but even like Thor, Loki, these characters that are living like 10,000 years, and they're being presented as part of a group that is living that long together. And it's not presented like, oh, that, you know, an older story might have presented that the people that are living this long are just become disillusioned and angry and they hate the world because they've just seen so much. But these characters in the modern movies are loving life. They're wanting more of it. Like the scene that I can think of in the Eternals is, you know, the characters who are in love, and you see them throughout all the different periods of history, of human history, and their love is blossoming throughout history, you know. And I think, don't get me wrong, what you're saying I think is still absolutely present, but I think that used to be the only thing that we had, but now there's this other thing that's emerging.
Yeah, and to Alessandro's point, I just want to add that this is why we started the whole Genetic, our movie, to bring a fresh perspective on longevity, because we felt like it's lacking. It's still a lot more, like I agree with what you're saying, Keith, but I think it's a lot more we can do. And with Jellyfish, we're gonna promote human lifespan through mainstream audience, and bring it to the screen for people to actually see that longevity is an amazing thing, and we should all be not only in favor, but we should be fighting to get there.
We also envision a future that we can keep, you know, supporting and funding through Jellyfish with other projects that also have this mission. And so just final thoughts on the movie. Love it, hate it.
Funny, very funny. Funny, easy to watch.
Transformative for my childhood. Love it.
Easy to watch and funny.
Love Keanu Reeves.
Young Keanu Reeves. Yeah. So
Love Keanu Reeves at any age.
He seems to have solved aging. He doesn't age.
Right?
Yeah. With another common point, why we're discussing this movie, because of Keanu Reeves.
Keanu, if you're watching this, we all want you in our films. So
I was about to say, not for nothing, Keanu is a well-known, like, wonderful guy, like philanthropist. Like, he might help us. So Keanu, talk to us.
If you're watching this, get on board.
Right. It's just complete disregard for like logic in certain cases, and just the craziness and sort of absurdity of it. I love that aspect of it. But yeah, I liked it a lot. So yeah, we are Jellyfish, and keep watching for other episodes where we'll look at other movies. And thanks for joining us.